Hi guys, welcome. First up, apologies. I will not be with you for week one of term four, which is this coming Saturday. All of my lecture slides and things are up as usual, but we are trying an experiment. We don't intend to do this to regularly do lessons via video, but we were curious to see how it would work. So, from your perspective, treat this as a resource with my sincere apologies that I can't be with you. And I will be wanting some feedback from you just to ask, was the video useful? How did you find it? Because I guess, unlike a lecture, you can go back and watch it later when you want to think about it or some other time. Anyway, that's for later. I will be there with you next week in week two. The other thing is about homework. Now, yes, I've set homework, but we won't be able to go through the homework from your last session in last term. I'm not going to worry about that now. I think we will deal with that in week two. Okay, I think probably we're ready to begin. So, in your workbooks, we're at section 7.1, diet and growth. And today we're going to look at 7.1 through to 7.3, I think. We're going to leave skeletal and muscular action until next week in a separate lesson. Key sorts of words in this section, things like anemia, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, and stuff like that. So, nutrients. What do we mean by nutrients? Because even though nutrients has a general meaning, oh yes, it's stuff that does you good, in this context, it has a specific meaning. Nutrients effectively fall into 6 types of essential food. There's carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, which we bundle together. And they are effectively the fuel that we burn so that our bodies work and our brains work and everything else happens. So carbohydrates, fats, and proteins are our fuel. The second type of essential food, or rather the fourth type of essential food, are vitamins. Now, vitamins are almost like the repairman, the maintenance person, in terms of how our systems work. And we'll spend some time today thinking about them as well. Then there's minerals, and then there's water. Okay, try this again. Oh, it works this time. So you can, and you find a lot of diagrams bundling together. Oh, it's good to eat these things, the nutrients. So you have grains, you have vegetables and fruits, milk and meat, egg, and fat, oil, and sugar. That's only helpful to a limited degree. So we're going to reverse this, and what follows effectively is not this, which is here is a list of foods and they contain nutrients you need with no other information, over to the other way round. That is, okay, you still need to get the various nutrients you need, but this is where you will find specific types of nutrients. But remember, this session is about a healthy life and stuff. As we're going to see, diet is only part of this. activity is one of the other key ingredients of good health. Dare I mix my terms? Okay, so let's reverse this and let's look at those 5 groups of nutrients. There are the carbohydrates. This is the fuel. Rice contains available carbohydrates, as does bread, as do potatoes, things like starches, things that we actually like to eat. And remember, your body is not your friend. That's awful. Your body is not your friend if you're thinking about food. Your body, particularly limiting food, your body will always say, yes, yes, we like that. Yes, we'll have some more of that, please. Oh, chocolate. Yes, we like that. We'll have some more of that. Um, and that's absolutely fine. It's part of the joy of living. But it also, you need to be aware that your body doesn't necessarily play honest with you. Okay, carbohydrates, the fuel. These are the types of food you find them in. Next, protein. Uh, Protein is the uh, second type, although it's bunched together very often. You find it in meat, fish, cheese, eggs, but many people don't realize, although you guys might, things like lentils and beans, they are stuffed with protein, and there's not a whiff of animal near any of them. So they're good. And maybe things like tofu, protein which is made actually from beans and stuff. And those of you that don't necessarily like eating huge amounts of animal, you might want to think about these as well. Many people do. Okay, carbohydrates, proteins. Let's now come to this area. Hang on, lipid? That's not in the list. Ah, but fats and oils were. Now, the difference between a fat and an oil is a fat is in this area that we're thinking about, is usually solid. So, for instance, butter is a fat. However, olive oil at normal temperatures is an oil. So, fats and oils, they effectively do the same thing. They get them from peanuts as well. It's not, just talking about soy or anything like that. And that's the third class of substances that we need. We need all of these to be healthy. Vitamins, well, basically you're talking about fruit and vegetables. I won't go through a list of them now. We'll get to that later in this session. And the other thing was minerals. Now, uh, here's a rusty nail, and you could chew that. I'm not suggesting for your iron you do that. But the sea, remember, has quite a lot of calcium in it, for instance, and quite a lot of iron in it. So things that live in the sea, like seaweeds, um, they're good sources of iron and calcium and fish themselves. So for minerals, that's as good as any. But minerals are slightly different because there are many different ways to find them. Okay, so this has really just been about where you get your major classes of nutrients from food and where you might be able to find them. Now, I apologize for the next 5 or 6 slides, and I admit I might have gone a little over the top here. We'll start with carbohydrates, fats and proteins, and we'll move through the other types of nutrient. And what I've done is basically I have, first of all, in the white part of these slides, talked about why they're important, why we must have them, why they are, in inverted commas, essential. And in the yellow part of this slide, where you find them. So, as previously spoken, and apologies if I've gone over the top here because this pattern I've used through all of the main nutrients. As we previously said, carbohydrates are the fuel we burn to allow our bodies to function. It's worth thinking, though, that yes, we are now living and breathing in 2025. Our body systems developed maybe, or our diet, our sort of the way that we need food, developed when we were hunter-gatherers. So turn the clocks back 10,000 years, probably longer actually, because we were quite happily hunter-gathering during the ice ages. So that throws up a couple of issues, and we'll mention this again, in that our bodies work the way they do, but the systems that are in our bodies actually developed under rather different environments and rather different conditions than modern humanity lives in mostly. Anyway, so carbohydrates are the fuel we burn to allow our bodies to function. Our lifestyles have changed since 10, 20, 30,000 years ago when our systems formed. And so now it's very easy to eat foods with lots of energy, but then not use it. If you're a hunter-gatherer troop, there might be 20 or 30 of you. You run as a loose tribe and you hunt and you gather. And you sort of you're running or moving around quite a lot of the day and the night. Sleep is a much more precious commodity than it is now, maybe. So then there are only very few situations where you could stuff yourself stupid with food and go, oh, I could sleep. And you probably wouldn't anyway because something would come and eat you. Now it's quite easy to eat foods with lots of energy and we don't really use it. So let's think about that for a little while. Let's first of all think about just the general energy split. So in terms of our daily energy, maybe between, I don't know, a third of that is taken up with physical activity. That's now. Go back 30 to 15,000 years, maybe 40% of that, or 50% of that, or even more, was taken up by physical activity. But now it's about a third, or just under a third. Thermic effects of food, maybe 10%. And finally, basal metabolic rate. That is the energy that it takes to keep your heart beating, everything else working, your body running, is the remaining 60, 70%. Let's do a little thought experiment. I'll have a quick slurp of tea. Let's imagine that you want to, I don't know, you want to go and jog for half an hour. I don't know, maybe run around the reserve or whatever you do where you are. Now, do you think, oh my goodness, I need to eat first so that I've got some energy, because otherwise I won't really be able to get up? Not usually, because our human bodies actually have a multi-stage energy system, which means basically you don't have to think about, oh my goodness, I need to do something, therefore I need food. So your bodies use cellular respiration to extract energy from food, and they store excess energy for you to be able to use. Now, let's just go to this part of the diagram for a second, and this will crop up in the next few slides anyway. So you eat food, that's converted into glucose, which can be converted into energy, okay? all plum and dandy. But there are times when you eat, there are times when you rest, there are times when you're active. Um, how does this work? Well, how it works is yes, you produce glucose, but you probably produce excess glucose. It clearly depends how much food you eat. If you're eating one slice of bread a day, there's not going to be too much excess glucose around. But if you're eating 2 or 3 meals a day, there's plenty of glucose around, a large excess of glucose. What does the body do with this glucose? Well, it turns it into glycogen, which is a glucose storage type compound, and it stores it in your muscles, and it stores it in your liver. And if there's excess glucose, so these are your two storage points. The third one is your blood itself. It makes sure a lot of that glucose is there as a triglyceride, and all of these three types of storage means that if suddenly, I don't know, you get attacked by a saber-toothed tiger and you have to do something immediately, you can immediately draw on these three so-called quick response energies. The glycogen is actually in your muscles already. So as soon as you start, actually, it's available and you can do really quite vigorous things, or run for your life, whichever situation calls for, because of this strategy. And this is the multi-stage energy strategy. Question: remember that our body systems did not develop with us sitting quite happily in houses. They developed back in hunter-gatherer times, in fact, ice ages. So your body's prime directive, if you like, was, okay, so there's food now, there might not be food tomorrow. In fact, there might not be food all month. So I need to store all of the things that I can so that when there isn't food, you've still got enough energy to, you know, live and breathe, but to run, fight, hunt, or whatever else you need to do. And the way your body does this is in this excess glucose. You've got your glycogen in your liver and your muscles as your ready use. You've got the high triglycerides in your blood as ready use. But if you want a longer storage, actually, glycogen turns into fat, particularly around your liver, but also around your internal organs. Now, that's absolutely great if you might be putting fat down today because you just killed a hairy mammoth or something and you spent the last week feasting on it. But you're not going to eat for the next 2 months, so, or whatever. That's a great system, and that system works for this. We don't do that very often now. In fact, we have a lot of food, so the body stores it as fat for the time it's going to need it, but the body actually seldom does need it. And whereas fat around your internal organs was a complete advantage because you do something with it. Now, of course, it's the fact that people can't get rid of, and yeah, it's a problem. Okay, so that's carbohydrates and protein and the particular problem. And we're going to come back to this. You'll find it crops up regularly. The next class is vitamins. And the body needs vitamins because they're essential micronutrients that support vital functions like metabolism, immunity, cell growth, organ function. And vitamins help the body produce energy. So they actually, I'm going to say oil the wheels, that's going to get very confusing. But they tweak certain things to make it easier for the body to produce energy, for the body to form blood cells and bones, maintain healthy skin, and generally that the body functions properly. And the example I gave before was maintenance workers. They're really good at maintaining your overall health and preventing various diseases. Uh, let's take the analogy one stage too far and imagine if the maintenance workers that maintain the sewer system suddenly decided they couldn't work anymore or went on strike or all went, I don't know, somewhere else. You would notice very quickly that the sewage system exists because suddenly you'd start smelling it. And I won't go very much further. We don't notice good maintenance and good protection because it's there. It's only when it isn't that you begin to notice the system itself. So that's what they do. Where do you find them? A variety of healthy foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean meats, dairy products, and legumes as beans. There is a second element to this about a healthy diet, almost forgetting what each thing does. A diverse diet that emphasizing these food groups is of itself healthy. There is one exception, which is vitamin D. Vitamins A, C, and D are the probably important vitamins. D, on the other hand, is different from A and C. It's quite hard to come across and get. Most of us actually produce our vitamin D ourselves when our skin reacts with sunlight. There is a reaction which produces vitamin D. That's important for a different reason. Um, you may or may not ever have heard of seasonal adjusted depression. It's the situation where in winter you're not as happy as you are in summer. There's been quite a lot of work done on this, and it turns out that in winter, because you don't really get much vitamin D is one of the important things that keeps you happy. In summer, it's fine, but in winter, many people don't produce enough vitamin D. Now, you can buy vitamin D in a tablet form, but you've got to remember that the vast majority of that vitamin D you eat is going through your stomach where it's destroyed. And also, there's good thinking needs to be done about, do I actually need to take all my vitamins from a bottle or a packet? Or actually, is it better to eat them in their natural context as food? And I think the consensus of opinion is this, that it's better to eat them in foods where you can. Okay, and there are some diseases which we don't hear about anymore, which are completely due to vitamin deficiencies. When I was when I was young, a long, long time ago, I remember I had friends at school who had funny shaped legs. I don't mean the shape of legs. I mean their legs sort of bowed out, around their knees. They had something called rickets. Now, in modern industrial societies, we don't see that anymore because it's a calcium deficiency. But look in the third world, dare I use that term now. Go to rural India. My daughter was, no, it doesn't matter. Um, and you'll see legs like that. And that's rickets, a disease we've forgotten about. Many parts of the world haven't. Scurvy is something else. Scurvy is a deficiency in vitamin C. And the symptoms are that, first of all, you feel quite ill and you can't really do very much. Your teeth, um, your gums start bleeding and your teeth fall out. It's lovely. And there are various other types of symptoms. Now, the place this used to be seen most was in the days of wooden sailing ships. And some quite, I don't know what to call them, people who looked at evidence and thought, oh my goodness, we need to do this. They started carrying lemons on their ship for the crew, and the crew had to eat a lemon each week. That was vitamin C, and the problem went away. Anyway, vitamin D, by the way, the main symptom is you begin not to see as well in the dark. Yeah. Okay, onto minerals, and again, I just go over the top, and I sort of have this is why you need minerals. Regulates uh, bodily functions, heartbeat, fluid management, stuff like that. All of these trace minerals are usually obtained through a balanced diet. You know, eat widely. And where do you find them? Well, just said it really: fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, meat, fish, dairy, and eating across different food types should give you quite enough of these trace minerals. And the final thing is water. So water is vital for health because it transports nutrients, it helps regulate your body temperature, lubricates joints, aids your stomach working, your gut working and digestion, helps eliminate waste, keeps the organs functioning properly, and staying hydrated also supports brain function, skin health, and energy levels. Unlike any other nutrient we are talking about today, water is an immediately essential nutrient or mineral because if you don't drink enough water, whether it's tea, coffee, it doesn't matter. Let's imagine you stop drinking altogether. You could be dead in 3 days. So it's really quite essential in a way that maybe the others aren't. Adults need about 2 to 3 litres of total fluid daily, and it doesn't have to be pure spring water. It can come as other things or in vegetables and stuff like that. Okay, we'll get to 7.2 now, a balanced diet, and we've done a lot of the thinking about this already, so I'm not going to rehash it. Here is a definition from, would you believe, the Oxford English Dictionary about what a balanced diet is, and this is a more web-based version and goes into more detail. I still like the OED on this, but anyway, there you go. Now, so in theory, a balanced diet is easy. Question. If you have a balanced diet, let's imagine you're 15 years old, would that be the same as a balanced diet when you were 30 years old? And would that be the same when you were 40 years old? Um, we're going to move into this in a moment. I've realized there's one thing I haven't really talked about, which is fiber. And it's not something you need for getting something to help something. It's not like I need a lemon because it has vitamin C to stop me getting scurvy. Fiber is really important because it keeps your gut working and crucially, your gut biome healthy. We're going to think more about this, but I will just explain why. So again, it goes back to when our systems developed, and you didn't have high energy foods then. What rated a honey bees maybe. Mostly what you ate, the idea was to get it down you as quickly as you could, so it went down with hair and everything else. Uh, Lovely thought. Anyway, and that's how we developed, and that's how our stomachs were originally designed to work, well, actually still are. So fiber is really important because, first of all, physically, it is the thing that allows your stomach to do what it does, move stuff through your stomach and eventually out as feces at the other end. So it helps, I don't know how to say this, keeps everything moving, might be, as my grandmother used to say. But there's more to this. Probably the most important organ in your body, no understatement here, is your gut biome. So let me just say that again. I'm not talking about your heart or your lungs I'm talking about the biological community that lives in your gut. It's actually the basis of how your immune system works. It's hugely important. And fiber, that biome, developed in those days when we were ripping animals apart and swallowing their hair and stuff. What a lovely thought. And fiber is important for that reason, to keep that biome healthy. We'll talk more about that. Now I'm going to go to a textbook, to a graph in your textbook, and this is it. And really, it's basically about how much energy you need at certain ages for your body to work. So we've got a point down here at 3 months, when that baby is no longer 3 months old, but a child at 8 years. Bear in mind, there's a huge amount of energy and mass gone in to get from 3 months to 8 years. And an 8-year-old child, probably about 4 times more, you have energy requirement, about 4 times more than the 3-month-old baby. And now let's go to 15 years old. And whether you're a boy or a girl, again, you need more energy again than the 8-year-old child. I'm going to go to a 50-year-old man or woman, and notice that you're suddenly beginning to use less energy than you were. Now, there is a gender difference here. Men use more energy than women. There's lots of interesting reasons for this, actually. Some are to do with musculature and body structure. But the other is something which is uniquely feminine and uniquely woman. Because guys, well, not guys, actually girls, ladies, you are the only ones amongst us that can have babies. And your system, your metabolic systems are much, much more flexible than those of your male counterparts. So, for instance, if you become pregnant and have a baby, during your time of pregnancy, your metabolic system runs at probably 2 or 3 times the capacity that it does when you're not pregnant. What that tells me is that ladies' metabolic systems are running at a lower percentage of capacity than their corresponding male colleagues' metabolic systems. Anyway, there's a lot of things we could talk about there. At the moment, I just need you to know that girls or women basically have a lower energy requirement on average than boys or men. Okay, this graph though is also a story about life. Yeah, we'll leave that for a moment. We're going to come on to this in the next slide. I'm assuming in this lecture that none of us do anything to harm ourselves. What am I talking about? Things like smoking. All the stuff that we're dealing with here assumes that you're not sabotaging yourself in ways like that. Okay, let's move on. So here's the graph, and here's the problem that our human architecture has of being designed to save as much food resources as it can against the time when you won't have anything. Now, let's come back to our graph and let's look at a couple of things that go with that. This graph implies that as you get older, you expend less energy. Okay, here's a different graph which actually shows you the same thing. You've got men in blue, girls in orange, and you can see that with age, both consume less energy. We should think in a second, because that says physical activity. With this, what's the answer? So we're eating more food, even if we eat very conservatively, we're still eating more food than we would have done as hunter-gatherers. And the reason that this ready-use storage becomes fat is we don't use that energy. Well, what's our answer to that? It's we do physical exercise. So this talks about physical activity. Um, and and that's why, because the only way you can start reversing this fat storage is to use either take in less energy, less food, and therefore produce less energy, or still moderate your diet maybe, but get rid of some of that excess energy in physical exercise. We'll come to this again in the next slide, but this has implications. The other graph here is about bone mass. Next week, we'll talk about bones and the mechanics of bones and muscles, but effectively, we've got age in years across the bottom. You're growing, so your bone mass is increasing. You get to maturity, however you define that. Well, we can define it in a number of ways, but I'm not going to get tied up there. And effectively, your bone mass peaks between about 30 and 40, 25 and 45 maybe. You're up here. And then we lose bone mass. And again, there is a gender difference. Um, Men and women both lose it, but women lose it more than men do. But both lose it. Now, why should we care? Losing a bit of weight, it's okay, you need to lose weight anyway. Bone mass is something you really don't want to lose. It's about the strength of your bones. And the older you get, when I was young, I was a motorcyclist and I broke my arm. Boring, boring. Still got the scar to prove it. And I was young enough that I was able to, uh, they were able to do surgery and blah, blah, blah. The older you get, the harder it is to repair bones because your body is no longer producing, running the process to make bone. So if you break your arm at 20 or you break your leg, fine. Break it at 60, it could kill you. Not because you're suddenly going to die, but actually it will change your lifestyle to the extent that it becomes much more difficult to stay healthy. There's another little tip here, maybe for ladies more than blokes. Um, how to say this? It's about your reproductive cycle. And so, okay, your reproductive cycle kicks in, depending on your age, probably between 12 and 15. And that all proceeds. And then probably somewhere about 40, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, that process starts to shut down. Uh, Initially, the early stages are called perimenopause, then you have full menopause. Um, and at that point, your reproductive system is then closed down. Ladies, at that stage in your lives, if you take hormone replacement therapy, which is, you need to talk to your doctors when that comes around, but the vast majority of evidence is it's a very good thing for you. then your bone loss follows the thick line. If you don't use estrogen or hormone replacement, your bone mass falls off much more rapidly. Low bone mass means low strength bones, which means more likelihood of doing yourself real damage. Okay, this little diagram here, you can see is really quite important in all sorts of ways. There's two more things pretty much that I want to say, and then we can metaphorically all go home. We'll stick with the aging thing, and this diagram happens to have a man in it, but it's much the same for women. As you get older, you exercise less, but crucially, you lose muscle. We just talked about losing bone mass. You lose muscle mass, and it's not as easy to grow that muscle mass back. So here we go. When I was in Singapore, I had a personal trainer, a guy called Max. He's a new Singapore commando, still in touch. Oh my God, I can't tell you the types of things that that guy and his colleagues do. His favourite thing was a pull-up bar, just the bar higher than you stand, so you have to jump to reach it. And his favourite trick was, okay, Simon, let's have 20 pull-ups out of you, and you've got 30 seconds. And off you go, and you do it, and you feel like you're going to die. And they said, okay, that was the warm-up. And so it goes on. And it's about the endurance that you can withstand, I suppose. Now, because your muscle mass shrinks, that endurance falls as you age. And this is 30 pull-ups. It's defined as 100%. Now, here's the interesting thing. So if you don't do very much, muscles waste a lot and your endurance falls massively. 75, you're only 30% able now. However, if at some point on that journey, you then start an exercise regime, this says 6 years, it was an academic study. Max would say, give me yourself for a month and I'll have you back in shape. You trust me, Max is a lovely guy, but you don't want to meet him in his professional capacity. He's a complete sadist. But you can see what happens. You suddenly can get back to 100% again. The decay still follows the same curve, but you're starting from a higher point. Right, okay. So let's come to exercise, and that's what this lower graph is about. What this last part, what this research here seeks to do is to understand why exercise seems to be good for us. And it almost doesn't matter what sort of exercise, whether it's running, cycling, there's a whole list of things here. So this exercise analysed why exercise improves physical fitness and gives you more sustainable health. And it's fascinating. The mechanism is different for each type of mode of exercise. And if we're being technical, they've actually analysed, I'll go back a step, one of the things that happens as a body ages is certain very important barriers weaken. So for instance, the blood-brain barrier, that barrier that prevents uh, blood and plasma getting mixed up, becomes weaker. The nuclear envelope, that's the barrier that protects your mitochondrial, basically your genetic code, gets weaker. Your mitochondrial barriers, the mitochondria begin to break down. These energy plants you have in every cell, as you get older, those barriers weaken. The plasma membrane that keeps your blood and your plasma, anyway, you can go through your intestine. the thing that keeps the internal barriers intact so you don't get ulcers um, and your skin. And they've identified all of the detailed mechanisms of how those different methods of exercise keep you healthier. And mostly it's by supporting those barriers. Anyway, we've gone far beyond the syllabus. I guess you could look at this lecture as depressing. Oh my goodness. Oh, we're all dying and falling apart, you know, muscle wastage, bone density. But there is a take home here for you and for me and for everyone. The take home is that if you don't use it as you get older, you will lose it. You can apply that to a whole range of things, and I'm not going to spend time there. Um, I'll give you one example. When I was younger, I was a long distance cyclist. So uh, I was in the UK and lived there. And one of the rides we did, for instance, was across the Scandinavian peninsula, up the mountains from the east, over the mountains, and down the west. It's just over 1,000 kilometers, and we did that in a couple of days. Um, and I love cycling like that. My life changed. I didn't have time to do that. Blah 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 blah. And I realised when I didn't have a bike anymore that actually, cycling's hard, isn't it? So I got an electric bike. It's not the same type of effort. At least when I'm cycling back home, and I live in the east, it's always an easterly wind. It's great. I can put the battery on a bit. But the movement and the exercise actually pays dividends. So the take home first is if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And if I was being wise, and one day I will become old and I will become wise, I'm not there at the moment. Somebody I respect a lot told me that life is a journey which we all have to make, but how we make that journey is over to us. Anyhow, okay, thanks for listening. And when I see you in the flesh in week 2, we'll just find out how useful this lecture medium is. Okay, bye bye, girls. No. Try that again. Bye bye, guys. Take care. Bye bye.